talk of women empowerment, I feel so incompetent here. Anyway, thanks so much actually for being present here and for participating in this summit of ours. We've been preparing for this for a very long time. We wanted to make it as comprehensive as possible. First of all, a round of applause to our speakers here. Both have huge years of experience in this space. So, it's essentially this whole session is about inclusive insurance, as I say, broadening horizons and in accessibility. And early in the day, the regulator spoke about access and affordability as an important element. Before we get to in terms of how we define inclusiveness and what we mean by that here, I think when it comes to talent for an insurance company, how does one ensure, since to use a lingo which is used in the insurance company, how do you ensure that the talent is less of a liability, more of an asset? You could begin.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for that wonderful question as well. I think one of the things that needs to be very done methodically is about training and upskilling your talent. So if you ask me, how do you make them an asset for the future, for now and for the future, I think it's very important to keep talent relevant to today's and the future time. And very systematically what we do is we anticipate the future needs. We anticipate in terms of the strategy. So it all comes down and boils down from the org strategy and org objectives. Where does the organization see itself now and in the future? And what skills and kind of talent will be needed to deliver organization and customer objectives now and in the future. And then you backwork it to put a robust learning development, upskilling programs to place. Because there's the market demands, the customer demand, technology. The landscape is completely changing. Now, how do you ensure that your talent is upskilled and reskilled to be in tune with these changes that are there? And I think that is one of the key things that we do to ensure that the talent that is there is always relevant in today's time and in future times as well.
And if I may add to that, in the context of inclusive insurance, I think perhaps it would be also helpful to identify those resources and agents perhaps from diverse resource pools as well. So not be limited or myopic in the scope of where you are picking these people up and how you are designing these training and upskilling programs, and be comprehensive of what the needs of the inclusion requirement would be. Yeah.
That's of course crucial. I think it's upskilling and reskilling and training is as crucial for any sector as for journalists as well, I think. And this is one added pressure that we always have. Now to the issue of inclusive insurance, how do you as practitioners in this space look in terms of how do we genuinely define inclusive insurance here? I mean, we are talking here of tapping the untapped, as it were. So just your thoughts in terms of, so that we get focused in terms of what is the target segment we are looking at and then how to approach it.
So again, a very pertinent question, I'd say. And the answer is inclusive insurance should look at getting insurance for every adult out there and giving effective access to insurance for all of those people. This should include people or segments that are underinsured, underserved. Like we have had several conversations today about the elderly population increasing and that being a segment. Then someone was talking about livestock insurance. So reaching the last mile, someone talked about the MSMEs, small businesses that need to have a safety net. People living in vulnerable circumstances that with a little sort of stroke of calamity can go down into a very dire situation financially. So reaching out to all of those people, all the segments that are underserved, underinsured currently, and giving them effective access. The way it is rolled out today, the insurance, the way it is difficult to access for those people, that needs to also sort of be looked at. And I'd go on to say, from the perspective of the entire life cycle of not only those that are being insured, but also the intermediaries or the agents that are going down there at the grassroots. So easing the entire life cycle of that journey for those people as well. Only then we will be able to achieve inclusive insurance, is my sense.
I think that's very well captured, Dr. Deepa. One of the things is also about how do we get the financial awareness into the segment. So one is deepening the reach and getting to where the customers are in terms of like the underinsured, because underinsured is also a big segment of population, and also the underserved that are there, where you need to deepen and widen your reach both. The other aspect is about the entire financial awareness, because many a times people just don't, the financial products are always very complex to understand. So how do we simplify and get the financial awareness quotient up? And then the entire buying journey, the entire onboarding journey, keeping people engaged, and using a lot of customer advocacy, especially in underserved places and cities, to get the complete buy-in and conviction of the financial products in. And I think there's a lot that one can do there. And the journey has to, it's the good bit is it's already started with the Insurance for All 2047 and the entire privatization of the industry as well. Now it's taking to everyone across the country, but I agree, with Dr. Deepa that insurance is for all.
Saba, for example, I think in my conversations earlier with Deepa, she mentioned this aspect that in order to get more inclusive, it's better to actually have local networks, have locally talented people who understand the geography, the terrain, and the target audience better, to involve them. What's your take, but what do we do in terms of the talent which is there in the organization? How do we incentivize it? Are we talking here of kind of restructuring the way the organization is in terms of talent? Or are we here looking in terms of an incentive plans so that the talent within the organization is incentivized to tap the untapped?
So there are a couple of things. I think in terms of deepening reach and getting local talent in, I think that's very important, that we get the local talent in the organization. And across hierarchies, because as you go to the underserved markets, we need to understand that market better first. What are the customer expectations? What's the market all about? What are the products that will really sell over there? Even what are the local customs and culture that exist on? Hire and have those sensitization across hierarchies, because you hire local talent, but there will be certain reporting structures as well. How are we baking that into our people practices? I think that's one thing that needs to be focused on. Once they're in, how do we incentivize them differently? I think our thinking needs to go a little bit in terms of, for example, are we incentivizing them for community initiatives, community engagement initiatives, building long-term customer relationships wherein you get, you're doing cross-sell, upsell, and incentivizing for that. Apart from the usual input and output that you do, are we incentivizing them for creating the financial awareness? I think we need to really look at incentives a little different over here after the hiring, sensitization, and getting people on board and stuff like that. And then looking in terms of recognition as well, that what kind of recognition practices really work in a particular location. Because many a times, as you go to underserved markets, will it be more community-led and community events where you'll recognize these people to create pride and respect in the community itself, because you have to think a little different when you go deeper in various places and have a different thinking aspect and angle to incentives, recognition, the way you hire, the cultural sensitizations you do, and having, like Dr. Deepa said, more inclusive environments for people to really thrive and flourish on.
Yeah, please.
If I may build on that, in fact, and so well put by you, but even the traditional incentives linked to higher revenue will work if people who are at, sort of selling the products or the insurance understand the market well, because they will be able to sell better. And I'll give you an example. It's from a traditional Rajasthani setup where they were trying to sell annuity to the elderly. It was not selling. And then one person there tapped onto the daughters of parents who didn't have sons, but were very rooted in their orthodox mindset to say we will not take money from or help from daughters. And they started marketing it to them as a gift to the parents who will have their pride sort of taken care of, and only the annuity, that income coming in, where the fixed would be with the daughter. So they found a way and the sales got boosted. So if someone understands the nuances, the traditional incentives will also work. Similarly, we were just talking in a health insurance, it was not being sort of taking off because there were no male doctors and nurses in that health center that they were accessing, so women stopped going and then they didn't find the value in it. So yes, very rightly, that if we understand the market and the end user and the dynamics there, even the regular incentives will work, but we have to sort of train them and pick people who understand the context.
Yeah, that's very nice. Thanks. Just to get Vinayak into the conversation, actually, here, Mr. Vinayak, what we were talking about a while ago is essentially this whole session is about looking in terms of talent for insurance companies, and how do, in a situation where we're talking of cover for all by 2047, we're talking of inclusive insurance, how do we therefore approach talent issues? Is there to give a feel of talent being an asset, to actually looking in terms of incentivizing plans for making them tap the untapped, as it were. Your thoughts on this before we proceed further?
See, we all know the IRDA 2047 dream, and IRDA has also done a lot in terms of launching the various vehicles. But we'll have to first understand, when does selling happen best? Finally, what does IRDA want? IRDA wants us to penetrate through all markets, have everybody covered. And that's a very noble thought. And for best penetration to happen, the ecosystem requires three things. You need to have the right product, you need to have the customer there, and you need to have the person who's selling be able to sell it to the customer. So we are custodians in terms of the products, and we are custodians in terms of our employees being able to sell. So for this to work, you need to ensure, as Saba said also, that your employees are well trained. And it all starts with, do they really believe that what they are selling is for the right purpose? That's where it all starts. If you do not believe from within that what you're doing is the right thing, you'll never be able to sell well. That's where it starts. So hence, when you're hiring talent and when you're onboarding them, when you're training them, that's where a lot of change happens. If you believe that you have the right employee who can be honed or onboarded the right way, you won half the battle. After that, it's about training. It's about training to sell right, training to sell honestly, because finally you're insuring lives, you're insuring assets. And hence it's important that when employees interact with agents, employees interact with customers, they're able to sell right. And hence incentive structures for employees also in this case has to be something which is relevant but simple. At the end of the day, you are hiring people whose jobs are not easy. And if you make an incentive structure very complex at the end of the day, he's never going to understand the nuances. So it could have a lot of elements that go into it in terms of designing it, but the final output needs to be extremely simple, something that can be broken down and understood by the frontline sales, because he's the person who's making the magic happen at the end of the day. So when you get all these three things done, the magic happens, and you don't have to worry about the sales or the productivity. Productivity will increase because the employee is engaged, and he's able to know what to sell and how to sell.
Yeah, very valid point. And actually, it will be nice if I can get all three of you to mention this point. You mentioned in the beginning, actually, you said about the right product. Then we talked about the customer and the person who's actually selling it. for right product, actually, crucial to that is actually innovation in terms of product design. How do we therefore focus in terms of having talent which is trained towards, geared towards better product design? I mean, that's getting to be equally crucial, isn't it? So, as a HR practitioner, how do you grapple with a challenge like this, that want to get talent to be better oriented towards product design, that mindset? So, what would be your immediate priorities there? Would want each of you to actually share some thoughts on that. Yeah.
So I'll give you my take on this. It all starts with the orientation. And this is not only for the product team, but this is for the company itself, that what is your focus? The focus always needs to be customer. The focus always needs to be external. And hence, even when you're designing products, if you're inward looking at your strength, what do I excel at, that's not going to ever give you great products. But if you do a lot of market research, if you're able to understand the psyche of the customer, what does the customer want? Finally, we all exist because there is this ecosystem in which customer is buying my product. So great product innovation will happen, A, when you're able to understand and demystify what the customer wants. If you're able to understand that, in the previous panel also they spoke about innovative products now. We have parametric insurance, we have pay as you drive. So insurance is changing in a lot of ways. And this is all happening because the customer needs more options, the customer needs flexibility, and the customer is ready to pay when he is using a product. So when you're able to understand these innovations came across because somebody was able to understand what the customer needed. The internal team, the moment everybody, including support functions, are customer-oriented, automatically changes will start happening, and you will see that the more products that are coming are products which are more relevant to the end user, and that's most important.
Yeah, and this parametric insurance is a great example, actually. Yeah, it's huge. So, Saba, you and Deepa.
Sure. Yeah, I think Vinayak rightly put it. It's about creating that culture of innovation in, and how do you do that? I think it's very important to be a listening organization. First, understanding what your employee needs are, what your customer needs are, because that's the chain that follows. And that's a culture that you build. When you have employees involved in, you're building a long-term culture. It's very important to understand that. Are we really anticipating customer needs pre-hand? What's the customer saying? What does the customer want? And many times, often, in customer interactions, you will get insights in which you have to take back to the organization and see what solutions you can draw, what delight points you can create. So it's very important as an organization culture, having that entire listening and feedback mechanism really closing on. Other aspect is about then how are we making and empowering our teams to take decisions that are needed for the customer. And oftentimes we see outside insurance organizations, hotel industry and all, even the last mile employee can take on decisions to really delight the customer in any way that's there. And that's, I think, something, those learnings we need to bring back as well, that how are we really empowering our teams to take the right decisions for the customer from a product perspective as well, and also from a customer service perspective also. So I think some of these points are very important. Third aspect is about how are we creating the right strategic priorities in, and having collaboration running across the organization. Because if everyone feels the pain of the customer or the need of the customer, or or an opportunity that can really be leveraged in, I think those are things that really work holistically from a culture perspective of empowering, of decision making, of being a feedback-oriented organization to really keep on listening to the true needs of the customer and putting in solutions to that need.
Yeah, I think the culture part is very important. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And I think both of them have made very valid points. I'd only like to sort of summarize perhaps what they have said is it's important for organizations, especially in the context of, you said, how to design products perhaps, to say be very agile, be innovative, recognize that we need to have more and more products. We need to have short-term products perhaps, which are coming grounds up in response to what the requirements. Someone mentioned requiring a day trek insurance. Unheard of, unthought of, but willingness to do it, agility to do it. The other aspect I would say, be willing to calibrate, iterate, reset, and redesign. Basis feedback, like she said. So we had a gentleman speak about livestock insurance. And he mentioned all the challenges that they faced and how they overcame them by reiterating their product and its delivery and service. So be shy as insuring agents, insurance companies from saying, we designed this product, but it's not working. When you have a setback, please find a way, be agile, innovative, to say, how do we circumvent this challenge and how to reiterate what we've done. And I think if we continue to do that, we'll be able to make a headway.
Very important, actually. In fact, this question was also triggered by, while we were working on this, this whole agenda for this summit, in interactions in the field, we heard from a few people actually who said that, I'll say the exact sentence, आप इंश्योरेंस का तो छोड़ दीजिए, ये अभी अप्रूवल्स जब तक आएंगे उसमें ही टाइम लग जाएगा, बिकॉज उनके ऊपर लेयर्स एंड लेयर्स हैं. It takes a lot of time for getting approval. So this whole thing of organizational culture change, where HR becomes like a strategic partner in the business, I don't know, that seems to be a huge challenge. Last 2 points, I think I'm looking at the clock constantly. The insurance regulator, Mr. Pandey, in the morning talked of compassionate care. He said insurers to have dedicated help desks at hospitals for prompt assistance. He mentioned these points in the morning. Now, compassionate care, growing business and at the same time having talent and employees who understand this compassionate care and actually are part of a help desk, which is genuinely helping. How huge, how challenging is that, building that culture in an organization in current time when it's so competitive?
Can I take that?
Yeah,
I think HR is overburdened in any organization today. So I would highly recommend that, and they perhaps need these kind of inputs themselves, these kind of upskilling themselves. So it would be best to collaborate and leverage, experts and consultants and specialists in the space who can facilitate these kind of enculturations and these kind of trainings on how to be more empathetic. And so reach out, seek collaborations from people who are experts in that rather than putting it also on the HR who perhaps themselves need that. And one thing, and you're all from the insurance space perhaps other than me, I looked up and I found that the whole idea of how insurance started was inclusive. When people were seafarers were putting in money to cover the losses of those who incurred it. So it was collectively putting money to cover the risk of others. So I think it's important to be conscious of what insurance stood for, in a sense, where it started from, and find that compassion, like he was saying, from within as well. Deep down, it's all there for everyone. And seek out specialists who are doing a great job at it.
Sure, I think I'll just add to it that
A little closer to you.
Yeah, it's very important to first build that culture of, again, compassion, and employees should feel it first. And then it will translate to everywhere in the ecosystem outside. And I think one of the key things on us, and I'm not saying we've really reached there, but I think everyone's working towards it, is that how we build that sense of belongingness and, sense of kind of purpose, and purpose is a little larger word, I know, but at least a kind of a sense of belief as well from an agent, advisor, employee, and the various chain of hierarchies there that are there. How do we really develop this community to serve the organization better in one tandem and in one alignment? I think that's there's a lot of work being done, but agents, advisors, and distributors are still little outside the ecosystem. I think what we'll need to do is get them more in the ecosystem and give them and connect them with the larger organization as well for some of these interventions to succeed, because it all begins from eventually the agents, advisors, distributors, and some places our sales force as well, depending on the channel of distribution, are the ones who are interacting with customers directly. So we have to build that kind of connect from that layer on across the organization. And yes, I know there's a lot of work in progress, but a lot needs to be done to actually get to that compassionate care that's there.
To make a meaningful debate, any provocation from your side, Vinayak?
So Kumar sir, let's go back to the vision 2047. It says insurance for all. We all spoke, I heard some of the previous gentlemen speak about risk selection. We want the best customers. When you're talking about insurance for all, you're talking about insuring everybody, which means the discrimination is not at a customer level. The discrimination will start at a pricing level. And hence the whole landscape changes. If the whole landscape changes, the way you look at insurance per se changes. And that change is not easy to fathom. What the IDA chairman was saying was part of a larger dream of having every hospital. Today there are thousands of hospitals. Technically or feasibly, in today's time financially, for you to cover each one of them may not be realistic. But come 2047, when you were talking about that kind of a scale, today you're talking about a general insurance in India which is 1% penetration. Even global averages are much more. Developed countries have reached the level of 30, 40%. Some of them are even 60, 70%. At a 1% penetration, you're talking about reaching up to 100% penetration. So when that has to happen, the entire ecosystem will change. The way we think about insurance will change. And then the way we react to customers will also change, because every customer out there is a customer for you. It's just how do you treat him, how do you give him the differential pricing, the different products that he requires, and how do you ensure, like a lot of companies in South Africa, the great ones, are also today ensuring people with HIV. That's not a reason for them to not get insured. But what they ensure is that the pricing is A, different, and B, they partner with all these customers to ensure that their longevity is higher. And that's what the entire landscape is going to change in the future. So it's important for us to understand and embrace the vision and ensure that we as insurance providers, as well as the ecosystem that we're building of our employees, are able to embrace that and make subtle changes in our lives to bridge this gap.
Last point, I think, at least from my side, is that at a time when this insurance, which is a high-touch push product, being made digitally available and digitization being so hugely in focus really, what as an HR practitioner, personally, or you think at least those who are the HR practitioners here, should have priorities for the immediate future and at least in the medium term? That's my last question to each of you.
So digitization is important. Essentially, from a simple HR perspective, for me, digitization is something that can help me do things faster, something that can help me create higher impact, or something that gives me a higher throughput. We personally started using AI a lot, and AI in terms of hiring, primarily because AI is a tool that today when you are hiring at a mass level, you have different CVs, everybody has a different perspective of putting in their stories. What you're looking at finally is that I have a certain story, I have a certain mandate, are you able to match that? Something as critical as hiring, AI helps you get everybody on a level playing field in terms of understanding their resume, then understanding which one of them are the ones which are more relevant for you. Because primarily, if I have to put hiring, is only two things. Are you able to select the right pool of candidates and not select the wrong pool? And out of the pool of candidates that you have selected, are you able to not reject the wrong ones? So the alpha and the beta errors. AI helps you there. There are a lot of tools that we now use in terms of making our content. And these contents are not only for our employees, but they are also for our agents. They help us sell better. They help us reach to the customer. And adults, the way we learn is there's a paradigm change from the way kids learn. They need to be bite-sized, they need to be short, they can't be structured in terms of timings. So all this helps us so in terms of retention of talent. And finally, we use a lot of AI and a lot of prediction model in terms of how do we plan for our talent. Finally, it's a large complex cycle wherein it's a pyramid from the CEO to the feet on street. And at every level you have attrition, at every level you have a growth, and at every level you need to fill in for the vacancies that get created that can come either internally or can come externally. So how do you manage that? And that also depends on the philosophy of the company. For example, if we've set a goal that 80% of our hires in the future is going to be internal, then does AI help you predict a model in which how do you make these grow? And accordingly, how do you align your training, development needs, and fast tracking those who need to move at a certain level to manage your aspiration? Because finally, we have an organization to run.
Thanks, actually. Vinayak, of course, has emphasized in terms of these immediate priorities where the money would be going and essentially a lot to do with AI. What would your closing thoughts be, each of you?
Yeah, I think data and technology are extremely important. I think it's a skill that is a must-have, especially using predictive analytics to do a whole host of stuff. But I also feel there has to be use cases to have the relevance of that technology and data back in the organization. And technology is an enabler, and the more you simplify, the more we are ensuring that we have people involved in terms of developing technology solutions who are at the ground. That's why I said a listening organization is very important to get that kind of involvement in, and they're simple to use, and people see value in that.
So what will be the immediate priority for the HR lead? What will be the immediate
So for
priority?
us, it is about that entire thinking, the quotient of culture and of capability and building skills around data and predictive data analytics and technology in the organization.
Okay. You agree with that? You are free to disagree.
No, no, when you said how we can use digitization or technology, I would not limit it in my response because they have covered how to leverage it from HR perspective. But I would go back to the reference he made of Africa, where they were covering HIV patients. The way they could perhaps do that or achieve that is by reducing the cost. And they used Africa as a case study in using mobiles and mobile technology and digital technology in rolling out insurance. So that can be used very efficiently, digitization and technology, to reduce the cost for insurance agencies and thereby making it affordable and effectively accessible for people. Just if this is the last comment, perhaps, or you are going to, this is the last comment, then I'd say, rather than technicality, inclusive insurance, and there is a share that I have heard, and I always wonder, it's perhaps written by someone who's heavily insured for life insurance. But I think that should be the goal for everyone to be able to appreciate it, to say, kadam kadam pe jahan maut intezar kare, bada maza hai agar zindagi ki baat kare. That can only happen when you're happily and heavily insured, and I hope we are able to achieve it for everyone.
Great, that's a very nice note to end on. Any questions? I don't know if you have the time, but any question, or I think they would want to meet you, I think, after this session, perhaps, if there are any questions. But thank you so very much. It's been a great learning. I had 2 pages full of questions, but I think the clock keeps reminding me that time is always limited. So thanks so much again.